Are we recording yet? Yes. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who's joining us for the 5th Human-Animal Interactions Conference in Africa, hosted by Dogalov Human Support Initiative. I have the pleasure of being your host, and I am Dr. Sunday Agbonika. And I am especially delighted to welcome you to not the first, not the second, but our milestone 5th edition of this conference. So this is our 5th year of doing this, and it has grown daily, and we keep seeing the impacts and everything. So it is so good to have you all here. From 213 participants from the very first conference to this edition of the conference, where we have 634 people that have signed up at the last check from 57 countries. That is a milestone for us so far. So thank you to everyone who is here and who has been here, who has been a part of our community, building up even to this moment. It is something that is truly delightful for us to have you join us, and we hope that the rest of the event, the rest of the meeting will be impactful, and you will have, you would learn a lot, just like we will as well. Please feel free to equally use the chat during the event to network, to share about opportunities, or other events that are related to these that are happening in your area or that you know about. And with that, I will move on now to inviting the moderator for the event. But then before that, please feel free to use the chat to equally share with us who you are, where you are joining us from. So with that, we will be welcoming the moderator for the event for today. So the moderator is someone who is a graduate of psychology from Redeemers University with a passion for mental health and human-animal interactions. She has interned in the veterinary setting and also in a psychological setting. He's keen on exploring the therapeutic bond between humans and animals. Outside academics, she has served as her departmental public relations officer, and she intends to pursue a postgraduate degree in clinical psychology with a focus on human-animal interactions. Let me probably add at this point that she recently graduated from her university with a psychology degree. So please make welcome Praise Ibukunoluwa Ogundipe, who is serving as the moderator for the event for today. So Praise, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm going to be moderating this event, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome the keynote speaker for her keynote speech with the topic rooted in reciprocity, connection, compassion, and animal welfare, human-animal interactions and animal-assisted services. Please join me to welcome Dr. Amy Johnson-Binder.
Thank you. Right. Hopefully you can see the right screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Is it not with my notes, right?
Yes, not with your notes.
Okay, perfect, because now I can no longer see. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share this platform with some of the greatest leaders in the field. And I'm really humbled and honored to be here. And thank you, Sunday and team, for always creating such a wonderful conference year after year. And I'm amazed at how you always pull it off, what seems like effortlessly. So over the next 2 days, you will hear a lot about the powerful connection we have with barnyard animals and what feels like magic when pairing animals and humans together. And my experience is not specific to the barn, so I won't be sharing barn animals in particular, but I do want to share a perspective of kinship among animals, nature, and humans, and how this ancestral, primal, innate interconnectedness underpins our work in human-animal interactions and animal-assisted services. So ethologist Mark Beckoff asks why we go to nature for guidance and why we feel so good when we hear, see, smell, and if possible, touch animals, when we look at trees and smell the fragrance of flowers, when we watch rushing waters in a stream, lake, or ocean. And similarly, American novelist Henry Miller often wrote about animals and nature, and he believed that nature is where we go when we feel out of balance or when something does not feel right. And this also demonstrates that innate primal connection to animals and nature. Vine Deloria Jr. in 1973 wrote in God is Red that many indigenous practices saw animals as moral agents, spirit guides, and teachers who are capable of communication and who are embedded in the fabric of life. So not beneath humans, but alongside humans. The question we need to ask then is, do we view our earthly connections as an ego system or an ecosystem? In an ecosystem, the emphasis is on mutually supportive relationships that avoid harming others. In an ecosystem here, where humans are positioned as above all other animals and nature, and it's intended to defend this desired image of the self. In one of the courses I'm teaching, the students have to compare and contrast a cultural perspective on a species, and several students focused on animals in captivity. They highlighted things like humane treatment and positive reinforcement, which is great, but if we are talking about an ecosystem, we assume that we know what's best for the animals, right? But if we view that through a lens of an ecosystem lens, we would avoid behaviors that might be harmful to others. Would keeping a manta ray in captivity, for example, be harmful, or would it be perceived harmful to that animal? And does it make a difference if that animal was injured and the goal was to keep him safe from his natural environment? And what if the goal was humane education for humans? What would the manta ray think? I think of these same questions when we include other animals, such as barn animals. Clinicians often include llamas in an animal-assisted support program and have been successful when, say, the client is observing llamas in the pasture and are asked to identify which llama they think they are or which llama represents their parent. And these can be very successful. If we are thinking about llamas from the lens of a llama, though, they are highly social and having a companion is necessary. They are also prone to being easily startled, so having strangers pet them, especially on the head, can lead to excess chronic stress. So having not only the knowledge of the animal at the species, breed, and individual levels, as noted in the competencies for animal-assisted services, but also ensuring that their needs are met and not sacrificed for the sake of human participants. And this would go for all animals. And since I was a child, I have always felt connected this way to animals and nature. I named the trees in our yard, I talked to the flowers, I rescued injured animals and nursed them back to health, and always wished I was a Dr. Dolittle or Snow White who could talk to animals and know what they're thinking. And I'm sure many of you feel the same or have felt the same. So Native Americans have viewed the earth as a community of living beings, of whom the humans were only a part. Standing Bear of the Lakota tribe said that Earth was so full of life and beings that they never actually felt alone. And if you think about that from the technological explosion perspective, children and adolescents and adults are spending more time indoors and online, and statistics are showing that they are experiencing more loneliness and isolation than ever before. In these traditions, though, in deep-seated beliefs, animals are not just tools or emotional support units to get us through those times, but are our kin. Luther Standing Bear, again, of the Lakota tribe, also shared the sentiment that we are of the soil and the soil is of us. We love the birds and beasts that grew with us on the soil. They drank the same water as we did and breathed the same air. We are all one in nature. And believing so, there was in our hearts a great peace, a welling kindness for all living and growing things. So this moves beyond we love nature. This construct is embedded in our DNA. And this quote beautifully expresses an indigenous worldview of deep ecological interconnectedness, emphasizing the unity between humans, animals, plants, and the land itself. It suggests that identity is not separate from nature, but formed in relationship with it. The shared experience of existing on the same land fosters love, respect, and a profound peace. So rather than viewing humans as above or apart from the natural world, it recognizes all beings as kin, bound by mutual dependence and belonging. And this perspective invites a compassionate stewardship-based approach to life, rooted in gratitude, humility, and reverence for the natural world. So in the movie Avatar, if you've seen it, James Cameron attempted to portray this bond and connection in this way. And I hope the video is not too blurry.
I'm trying to understand this deep connection that people have to the forest. She talks about a network of energy that flows through all living things. She says all energy is only borrowed, and one day you have to give it back.
So here, the Navi bond with others through this neural connection, which creates a mutual, respectful relationship that mirrors the interconnectedness of ecosystems. And to me, this type of attunement reflects the experiences that we have in human-animal interactions and animal-assisted services, where humans and animals communicate non-verbally, co-regulate, and really rely on trust and reciprocity rather than dominance. The emphasis is on the power of the relationship rather than control, and instead honoring the agency and sentience of all beings involved. So, speaking of soil earlier, you may have heard that the grounding power of walking barefoot on the grass. But did you also know that underneath our feet is what the German forester Peter Wohlleben called the wood wide web, which I love a good pun. The wood wide web, where mushrooms and other fungal organisms communicate with the trees underground in what is referred to as the mycorrhizal network. So the organisms essentially are interwoven in the tree roots, where they communicate and share and transfer water, nitrogen, carbon, and other minerals. When saplings, for example, do not get enough sunlight, they rely on this underground network for nutrients and sugar. In England's University of Reading studied Douglas fir trees and found that the trees can recognize root tips of their relatives and use this fungal net for carbon and other nutrients. So specifically, many of the trees rely on the mother trees, which are the older trees in the forest with the most fungal connections and are able to feed the young and can identify others in need and with poor health through their distress signals, and they pass along the necessary nutrients. And this mycorrhizal network has been symbiotically interacting with plants and trees and has shaped life for over 475 million years. This system, however, didn't evolve through dominance or hierarchy or education or training. It evolved through interdependence, and no one taught the roots physics. No one trained the fungi in empathy. It just is. In 2000, Anton Mosher created the term ecosophy, which refers to the science of nature's wisdom. As a somewhat precursor to One Health, this holistic worldview is interdisciplinary and broad with a macroscopic lens. And the wisdom embraces intuition, sustainability, diversity, flexibility, self-organization, and integration. And thus, nature is taken as a whole, and Mosher posits that we do not intrude on the integrity of the integrated natural processes. So One Health, as I'm sure you're all aware, is that interconnectedness that exists among the environment, animal welfare, and human well-being. And I think One Welfare was developed as a way to operationalize this phenomenon. One Health, One Welfare, One Medicine, they all emphasize the interdependence of human, animal, and environmental health, but differ slightly in scope and emphasis. One Medicine began long ago, initially originated with a focus on shared diseases between humans and animals, and primarily focused on a biomedical lens. One Health then expanded this to include environmental factors, zoonosis, public health, and promoted collaboration across disciplines. And then One Welfare goes a step further by emphasizing not only physical health, but also emotional and social well-being, recognizing that improving animal welfare can positively impact human welfare and vice versa. Historically, farm animals have been included in animal-assisted services, such as the York Retreat, which was a psychiatric hospital in the late 1700s, where patients were able to care for small animals. And with Florence Nightingale, our famed nurse, who wrote in her notes on nursing that having small animals in hospital rooms provided health improvements and stress reduction in patients, which allowed them to better heal. In the 1950s, this Time Magazine article highlighted the inclusion of a variety of animals at the University of Michigan Children's Hospital, and they included cows, monkeys, ducklings, rabbits, turtles. And the article showcased how wonderful it was for the children, but said nothing about how the animals may have felt. And I'm sure we can agree that animals were not asked if they wanted to participate, if they wanted to be handled, dressed, walk on slippery floors, be retained in small jars with limited movement. So a healthy relationship is a reciprocal relationship whereby the animals also receive benefits in the interaction. To say that we operate purely as equals with our animals and nature cannot really be true. So liberationists like Dr. Zamir feel that our animals can be exploited to some degree, as they have almost no say in where they live, who they live with, when they eat, where they eat, how much they eat, when they go in for the night. So the power differential weighs in our favor. Ensuring that our animals are, at a bare minimum, are engaged in the 5 domains, which moves slightly away from the 5 freedoms that most people are familiar with. But the 5 domains focuses more on a positive lens rather than what should not happen to avoid negative welfare. So the 5 domains are by Meller, and it suggests that having these 5 or paying attention to these 5 domains helps the animals with their well-being, and it's our responsibility to ensure that they have good nutrition, which is access to quality food, water, and to maintain their health and strength. That their environment, that we have considerations of factors such as temperature, space, how much space do they have to move around, how far can they roam, opportunities to perform natural behaviors. If they're meant to walk and graze while they're eating, then we should offer that space to them. Minimize discomfort, ensure comfort and safety. Their physical health, ensuring good physical condition that prevents pain, disease, injury, and promotes overall vitality and wellness. Their behavioral interactions, and this refers to how the animals interact in the environment around other animals, humans, in the inclusion of positive social interactions, and mental enrichment while minimizing negative experiences. And finally, the core of Meller's model is determining the animal's affective state, emphasizing the need to reduce negative mental states such as fear, frustration, and pain while ensuring positive ones like comfort, pleasure, and safety. This is especially true when we're asking animals to work with us in human-animal interactions or animal-assisted services. And there are many factors to look at in ensuring the welfare of animals, but in this limited time that I have, I just want to focus on one that I think is often overlooked. And so all animals use play, and it's a powerful indicator of animal well-being and social connection. Burkhardt in 2015 noted that play behaviors in animals can serve as a valuable welfare assessment tool that provides evidence that the animal is coping well in its environment and interactions, and noting these 4 ideas. That play does not contribute to immediate survival. It is not functional. It doesn't serve any other purpose. It is spontaneous, self-rewarding, and demonstrates that they're experiencing positive emotions, and it occurs when the animal is free from stress. Some people have an expectation that animals always behave calmly or in a particular way in animal-assisted services, though play can serve a purpose as well. And as I mentioned earlier, knowing your animals at the species, breed, and individual levels is essential, ensuring optimal welfare. The International Association of Human-Animal Interaction Organizations has a set of guidelines specific to farm animals and animal-assisted services, which is a great resource, and the link is right here. And so in summary, the recognition that as many beings as we have on the farm, in our home, in our workplace, that we have that many separate views. So coexisting with our animals in a biocentric ecosystem brings mutual benefits to the participants in our therapeutic, educational, and emotionally supportive interactions. And they're more than just tools. Viewing our animals through their lens can help them not merely tolerate the interactions, but willingly engage in them and hopefully enjoy them. And that's my presentation. Thank you. I don't know if there's any questions or there's a hand raised. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Anybody who wants to say something, by all means.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, there is an echo, but we can hear. Seems to any questions?
So I would just like to say how glad I am that you mentioned the needs of the animals, especially when it comes to farm animals that are being used in programs. I mean, dogs, for example, are used to being in a home, indoors, where there are a variety of things like the slippery floors, you know. But farm animals aren't used to this. And so it really is extremely important that their needs are very well considered if they're going to be used in these kinds of programs and taken into indoor environments and being touched and exposed to so many things that they're not used to being around. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Totally agree.
All right, so we'll be taking, thank you so much, Dr. Lee. So we'll be taking questions. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box. All right, Abibulai Adekunle, you're welcome. Ayu Michael, Daniel, Manuel, you're all welcome. So if you have questions for Dr. Amy, please put them in the chat box so we can get right to it. Okay, Faloye David, you are welcome. Okay, the absence of a question from the chat box, would like to say a very big thank you, Dr. Amy. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
For an amazing presentation. And right about now, okay. Onyesi, you are welcome. I hope I pronounced that well. So we'll be moving on to the next session. where we'll be talking about the topic towards a more humane community, resilience and healing through our connection with non-animals. And right about now, I'm going to read the bio of our beautiful speaker. He is the co-director of the Institute of Animal Sentience and Protection and the Director Emeritus and founder of the Institute for the Human-Animal Connection at the University of Denver. He teaches in the Graduate School of Social Work, examining the intricate relationship between people, domestic, and wild animals. His research, scholarship, teaching, and community practice work are focused on the issues of social and interspecies justice, global perspectives of human-animal interactions, and human ecology. Please join me to welcome Professor Philip Tedeschi. Professor Philip Tedeschi, are you here?
I am here.
All right, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good to see everybody this morning. And thank you for the outstanding presentation that we just heard. It's really was very inspiring. And thank you for the invitation to join you this morning. I'm just going to be sharing a bit about the work that I do. And let's see if I can pull this up here. Can you all see that? Let's see here.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. I am just trying to get a sense. Let's see here. Hang on a second. I have a, let me start over here just for a moment because I have a few things open. Make this a little easier. Okay. Well, let's see. Are you, I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical issues here. Are you able to see my
Yes,
lead
yes, Dr.
slide?
Philip, we can see your slide.
Okay, you can. Okay, great. I can't see myself, so I'm not entirely sure. Okay. Well, this is a little strange here, but okay. Well, I'm just going to start in, and please let me know if there's technology at this end, problems at this end, because I just can't see what you all are seeing necessarily, other than my slide. But I'm not sure entirely why that is. But so as mentioned, I'm at the University of Denver. I'm a professor there at the Graduate School of Social Work and founder of the Institute for Human-Animal Connection, and then more recently have taken on the directorship of a new institute called the Institute for Animal Sentience and Protection. And what I would like to try to talk about today are some of the considerations that I believe are relevant and maybe even pivotal to the evolution of our field as practitioners working with animals. I believe that one of the things that has really become clear, even in the last presentation we just heard from Amy, this intersection between human well-being and animal well-being are deeply interconnected. And so these are looking at some of the ways that we've started to investigate these issues and some of the research initiatives and concepts that are working on these topics together. We are doing this with our colleagues in the animal law field. And so one of the areas that we've become interested in examining is this concept that animals are limited to the status of property in most places in the world, including all over the United States. We don't have a single state in the United States, for example, that does not see animals as having basically the same legal standing as property that you own. You know, your toaster oven or the shoes on your feet have the same legal position as animals do in our country and in many places in the world. But there also are places that are beginning to challenge that and change that. So that's an exciting development that we're able to consider. We define, I'm going to be talking about this concept of a humane community. We define that as the presence of persons who are able to lead us in these areas, institutions, including universities, for example, and policies working across social and political systems to begin to establish a more sustainable and humane relationship between human animals and the living environment. So I'll be talking about that through a little bit throughout. I do want to let you know that there are some descriptions and some images that you'll see in this presentation that both show our animals in both distressing circumstances, but also some flourishing circumstances. But I wanted to warn people a little bit about that. That I was really excited to hear that this conference was focusing on farmed animals. And in many ways, it's particularly appropriate for us to then have these deeper ethical conversations because it's, you know, arguably the animals that have been most invisibilized in places around the world. And I would argue in particular, maybe in the United States, you know, that are in problematic circumstances are farmed animals. So as we're starting to explore the therapeutic potential of having, you know, farmed animals and human animal interactions, I think we also want to recognize fully that these are also animals that are in very difficult circumstances all over the world and require our attention and support. I want to dedicate the talk to some of the work that I've been doing. In most recent years, I've been working in donkey, in particular, donkey rescue in Israel and in across parts of the Middle East. And so I hope that this will be supportive of moving humans and non-humans out of harm's way. So to give you a little bit of background on myself, I started out wanting and interested in studying veterinary medicine at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin. And somewhere along the line, ended up realizing that what I was the most interested in was studying people and animals. And that one of the things that I became quite fortunate about is getting to know the work of Dr. Jane Goodall, who at the time was telling us quite a lot about how animals could inform the human condition. And she became a supporter of my work as a student and encouraged me to move forward. And this book, if you haven't had, I mean, Dr. Jane just turned 90. This book, The Jane Effect, was written on her 80th birthday, actually. And I was fortunate and honored to write a chapter for Dr. Jane that was entitled Waking with a Smile, that I have to say that thanks to Dr. Jane and many of my colleagues here actually at this conference have supported me in continuing to study the human-animal connection. It's been really a joy and an honor throughout my life, and I know many of you feel the same way. So my work started as a graduate student studying this. It led me to social work. And you'll hear that throughout my presentation because that's in many ways the way I started to think about it. So my foundational research was on what I'd call bioaffiliation, or really this relationship with the living world. I've been interested in that in every context, both kind of good and bad, and continue to do that to this day. I'm really interested almost in every version of our relationship with the living world. If you're interested in the work we're doing, you could find a little bit about us. We were the very first human-animal bond academic center that emanated out of the social sciences way back in the early 2000s. I know Michael's here, who is a Coloradoan and joined me to and helped me begin this and launch the Institute for Human Animal Connection. We have a robust set of academic programs and research agenda that if you're familiar with our institute, I won't say too much about that other than we have quite a lot of material now and interesting projects looking at kind of three core areas, those being the therapeutic and health promoting benefits of our relationship with animals, something we call conservation social work or ecological justice. And then we also look at the role of animals in broader community contexts. One of the other areas we've done significant work in, and will relate a little bit to the topic I'll be talking about today, is studying animals in with relationships with incarcerated individuals. We've actually started the very first prison dog program in the Middle East fairly recently, and have published a protocol that's available for free if you're interested in looking at this particular application and its work. As I mentioned earlier, I'm doing work in this particular area of animal rescue, and my work has started to move more directly in animal protection work. In particular, I've become interested in the welfare of equids in conflict zones and other animals as well, I guess, and in complicated and conflict-oriented settings where they have even fewer protections. Most recently, we have opened this new institute called the Institute for Animal Sentience and Protection. I'm excited to tell you that we are in the process of a formative dialogue with IAHIO to begin examining a collaborative effort to establish a declaration, a global declaration of the role of animal sentience in IAHIO's work and in human-animal interaction and animal-assisted services. I think what I believe we're going to find is that this is the necessary evolution of our field. That many of us for quite a long time have been talking about this underlying and critical dimension that animal well-being is critical to the process of it being beneficial or therapeutic for human beings. And so I really am excited that that we're taking the next step to articulate this in a bit more of a comprehensive way. If you're joining IAHIO in Amsterdam, you'll see us there, and we're going to be talking in more detail about this declaration as well. This new institute, in fact, was driven by a philanthropist who encouraged us to confront human arrogance as part of this process. For me, that has been a welcome agenda, in part because one of the things that I think, is almost a story in and of itself. As I was talking about earlier, if animals are still considered simply property, it is hard to elevate their well-being to the appropriate ethical consideration necessary to really fulfill, I think, our commitment to other animals. And now we understand that these, other animals, other non-human animals, also share with us complex cognitions and emotions, and really are, as we start to study them, are recognizable, in this context, making the difference one of degree rather than of kind, so that we share a tremendous amount with other non-human animals. These have been documented in many different ways, but I think one of the most interesting, that tells us kind of where we've started and hopefully how far we've come, is that in the expression of emotions in man and animals, Charles Darwin, got himself into hot water because he was confronting or countering the creationist view that man, created in the image of God, and the scalae naturae, the nature's ladder, that indicated, there was God and angels, and then man, and then woman, and then the kind of the hierarchy of other animals. That's in many ways still influences our treatment of other animals. What he began to study were things like this, these unique capacities for expression, and that human beings were identified as having, facial muscles, which gave them the ability to communicate and show affect and emotion, were seen as not, demonstratable in animals, where Charles Darwin began to challenge that. And it opened up, an argument that we still have to this day. To what degree do other animals experience a wide range of emotions and cognitions, and how do we know that? So this is some of the work we're studying now. We're starting to look at tools to begin to study animal sentience and document it, both for the purpose of the work that we all do, maybe in animal-assisted services, but maybe more importantly, in the context of things like policy, legislation, and other strategies to move legal standing forward. One of the concepts embedded in this is the concept of the theory of mind, sometimes called the belief in animal minds, or BAM, or sometimes the theory of mind is called TOM. But these really, in many ways, are, just linguistics talking about the same idea, that what we're recognizing that animals show us all the time, whether, these wide range of expressions of capacity for deep and complex emotion and cognition. This includes communications. It includes, recognition of complex social interaction, the ability to plan and tell time and have opinions, and family and culture. These are things that are deeply recognizable in animals. And now I think what we have to kind of acknowledge as a community, and I hope you'll agree with me, that our field of the human-animal interaction really does, in many ways, have a unique role to play. Because as an industry or a field of study that is promoting human relationship with other animals, it feels to me that we're maybe best situated, or maybe uniquely situated, to also teach other people about these deeper concepts of animal sentience, or the theory of mind. There's been new developments in these areas, and we've also been sitting on this knowledge for quite some time. I'm hearkening all the way back to 2012 here in the Cambridge Declaration of Animal Consciousness, but just as recently as this last year, we've seen the New York Declaration coming out of NYU's work, with a sign-on page that has allowed, hundreds of scientists and persons who work in the area of neuroscience in animals to confirm that they believe almost all, if not all, animals have this capacity for animal sentience. And the conclusion from this most recent event was that our decision making should probably assume, in almost all circumstances, that animals are sentient, and have strong capacity for sentience-based communication and experience, meaning that we should be making our decision making largely with this as not a question mark, but rather something that informs our decision making almost on every level across many different species. Unfortunately, we're still in a stage where, to a large degree, the science of sentience, which is quite robust at this point, is really not being used by our general society in numerous contexts, and in many ways. So we have this kind of breakdown, really, of our society's willingness to acknowledge other animals as having this capacity. At our program, for many years, we've also been thinking about and writing about the interconnectedness between biodiversity health and human resilience. These are broader concepts systems concepts of things like One Health and One Welfare that Amy was talking about earlier, we also use those frameworks and understand these issues through these particular lenses. I wanted to start talking about some of the ways we know that this is emerging, and these are prominent. So as I'm a therapist, I'm a psychotherapist and a clinical social worker, and one of the areas that has been emerging over the last, I would say, maybe 4 or 5 years in particular, um, largely generated by new recognition of mental health problems that are related to persons' exposure to harm being done to our living systems. These are sometimes called psychoteric disease or psychoteric syndromes. These are really mental health problems related to persons being exposed to the harm that's being done. What you're looking at there and as an image is from a oil spill that happened in the Gulf Coast. Speaking for myself, having worked in that area and having paddled the estuaries of the Gulf Coast, it was heartbreaking to see these animals whose lives have been permanently damaged, if not ended, as a result of these kinds of human-animal conflict issues. Glenn Albrecht, a sociologist from Australia, termed this concept solastalgia. And what he was referencing was, and used this term, having defined this as feeling homesick even while you're at home. And in many cases, I think these are important concepts. They're starting to be studied into a much greater degree in relationship to the emergence of developmental challenges for youth, including the development of things like callous and unemotional traits in youth who, what they believe, have been impacted by this relative, chronic exposure to harm being done to living systems, right? So as we're starting to think about, the role or the concept, right, of animal well-being in animal-assisted services, we might also want to recognize or zoom out into the meso and macro considerations that these also have implications for more humane communities to raise our families and live ourselves. Another example that's prominent in the West, I'm giving you these examples because these are common. In many states across the United States, they're what they're called killing contests, where these are often almost like games where you can win prizes for having killed the most animals, the smallest animal, the largest animal, those sorts of things, right? And we've been working very diligently to try to change this. We've made killing contests illegal in Colorado, but in many states they remain legal and are continuing to this day. There's many other examples of these sorts of things, recreational activities where we're teaching inhumane behavior and harmful behavior towards other animals. Obviously, one of the most prominent are things like zoos, where, I think one of the ways we might think about this is, where we're putting animals on display and yet also kind of simultaneously teaching persons who are doing this, observing animals in these circumstances, really not to see what they might, where we don't, teach persons how to evaluate the animal distress found in animals in captivity, for example, or animals in certain entertainment circumstances are also well recognized and documented. So we're exploring ways to do that and believe that this is also part of human-animal interaction work for the future. Now, our own work as social workers, we often frame our relationships with our communities through a lens of what we call risk and resilience. And what I want to talk just briefly about is some of the research we've done that has established animal welfare as a critical building block to social justice and arguably even interspecies justice. So I'll be talking about that here in just a moment. At the University of Denver, we've also opened a clinic that does specialized forensic animal maltreatment evaluations. We do these for the courts and have established the capacity to help inform the court about effective approaches to individualized assessment with persons who have engaged in varying degrees of illegal cruelty behavior. Our program, as I mentioned earlier, focuses in these three core areas. Animals and communities, our therapeutic and health promoting benefits of animals interactions, and One Health or conservation informed social work. And one of the things that has been really quite exciting about this area of work is that as we've started to articulate the significance of animal well-being in communities, we've recognized how deeply interconnected we really are. And so that becomes one of the opportunities, I think, for our collective work between things like the veterinary sciences and the social sciences. And now we've included our partners in the animal law community who have also been excellent contributors to that area. Humane communities, we've started to publish in this area. So, we're really looking at the capacity to influence the well-being of humans by elevating the recognition of how animal welfare, animal protection relates to the human condition. And so these start to include a lot of the typical suspects, right? Things like income equality and wealth disparity issues, racial and economic segregation, housing insecurity has been a very significant area where we see animals routinely, for example, in problematic circumstances as a result of unhoused persons, opportunities for education, unfair or uneven or unfair enforcement of the laws relative to animal well-being, incarceration, those sorts of things. So these are also have implications for animal well-being. We've also been able to document in quite a landmark study that despite many perspectives, race and ethnicity are not indicators on whether somebody cares about animals. So, recognizing that racism has been quite embedded in both the literature and even, availability of access to services, things like veterinary care. If you've heard the concept of things like food deserts, we also have veterinary deserts, or places in which animals are not actually able to be cared for, in part because there's struggles or lack of access to services. These are often driven by some of these particular areas. I did see somebody had their hand raised. Does somebody have a question they'd like to?
Oh, sorry, that was me. That was a mistake.
Oh,
Please
okay.
go on.
No worries.
Sorry.
Yeah, glad to answer questions at the end as well. So, okay. So, just to add a little bit more examples of this, when we've been studying this, what we've found is that areas that had been previously redlined, if you're not familiar with that term, these would have been mapping systems that were used to prevent integration of communities. So places that had significant kind of racial redlining policies also turn out to be places where we've had difficulty finding these services. So one of the things when we start to overlay or map animal maltreatment and or enforcement of animal welfare laws unfairly, we start to see them largely related to these same kinds of social policies that have been so problematic for communities relative to any number of human health issues, but also are related to the well-being of animals in those settings as well. So we've been studying enforcement issues. We have quite a lot of new research in this area that has begun to document higher rates of policing on these communities. So in many ways, these could be articulated in some ways as policing of economic circumstances. We have worse health outcomes for pets in those particular areas and communities. And also, we need to, I think, recognize that these also have direct impacts on human well-being, including things like fines and punishment, other kinds of punishment, including things like incarceration as well. So as we apply risk and resilience theory, we've been working with organizations like the Humane Society of the United States, which I know has now changed its name, by the way. But we've been looking at the Pets for Life and program through a One Health study, documenting the fact that when we make resources available to individuals in these communities, when we ensure that underserved communities are really provided support for accessible and affordable care, we can alter the human metrics and well-being of those communities as well. Now, this is one of the places that I think farmed animals kind of disappear, right? In a lot of cases, we're studying companion animals and pets. We have very little information really about how the larger scale industrial level farming, factory farming, if you will, is impacting human health. But we know that there are numerous examples of problems to the environment in those communities, but very little study relative to the well-being and health and the mental health of persons in those communities. My own most recent work and a book that I published and some of you are co-authors of who are here today was called Transforming Trauma, Resilience, Healing Through Our Connection with Animals. This is really the study of the role of animals in trauma-informed care. Probably the single biggest takeaway of that inquiry was this kind of bottom line is that, as we start to think about animal-assisted services, there's really now good reason to believe that the outcomes are less based on the interventions themselves and more based on whether or not we have animals who are really flourishing in the context of those interventions. That, if you will, this concept of neuroception of safety, meaning almost the pre-conscious capacity to feel safe, emanates from the presence and well-being of the animal that's right in front of us. Now, this is a typical pattern of behavior or experience in other animals. So we see other animals use careful observation of their family members or their pack members or their herd members to determine how they should be functioning, how relaxed or comfortable they can be, or whether they should be experiencing, the potential for a threat. But I think one of the things that maybe is kind of the single most important recognition here is that this is also true for people. So that when we're in the presence of animals that are even in, a mild distress, it's much more difficult for there to be a therapeutic outcome. So these become opportunities to really, I think, harness the most significant power in animal-assisted services being animal well-being. This neuroception could be viewed as an unconscious perception or something to that degree, but it informs us about safety, that these are the primary cues that we're provided to detect danger or risks in our immediate environment. And then faulty perceptions of risk are often what we mean by things like post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Where somebody is no longer really unsafe, but feels unsafe under those circumstances. So I won't spend too much more time on this, but I want to recognize that this may be our single most important clinical variable in the work that we're doing. In our organization, we're also studying this capacity for self-regulation, looking at how this relates. We know that animals play a fairly significant role for many people, not even animal-assisted services or interventions, but really the everyday relationships between people and their companion animals inform this work. When we're in the presence of a safe animal, it allows for all different kinds of social and emotional learning. One of the things I think that might be the most interesting, is that these have become informative to broader context and also individual context. So these are informing us across the larger capacity for systems. So just as an example, you're looking at a therapy session with actually in the upper picture with my dog Samara, working with a youth in a program. But you're down below, you're looking at community members who are interacting with animals, for example, in things like crisis response, where we're responding to natural disasters and that sort of thing. One of the areas that we've started to use the term radical acceptance as one of the ways of articulating this amazing connection between animals that are provided the opportunity to interact with us and while they're thriving, provide a much more supportive and non-judgmental relationship. This capacity for radical acceptance is critical for many of the individuals that we're working with in complex clinical settings, but that can only occur in this context of largely animal well-being. When we have that circumstance, we have the ability to do really good clinical work. So that starts to allow us to help people reevaluate the experience that they're having and literally alter their own capacity for overcoming trauma. These are things that we've understood in the context of good human therapeutic relationship, but less so in the context of our relationship with animals. Now I think we're really at that point where we have much more knowledge in this area. Okay, and so kind of to start wrapping up here, I wanted to just talk a little bit about and encourage or invite some more dialogue about animals' capacity for sentience. Increasingly, the information that we have in this area and evidence suggests that we should have, real, not only understanding of this, but a need to start to think about actionable ways to make this relevant, almost sentience-oriented intervention work. This might include us making the assumptions that are built off of the certainty of this knowledge versus uncertainty. And hopefully our field will become really one of the key fields that, that can help our communities and leaders, our legislation and policy, move those concepts into place as more substantial support for animal well-being. This could include starting to look at animals in research and medicine. Our own animal law program has been active this summer in several cases, including lawsuits against research facilities that are failing to protect animal well-being adequately in the scientific work they're doing. We've also sued a traveling road zoo show that has now prevented them from, utilizing highly sentient animals like elephants, for example, in traveling road shows. We're starting to look at animals in our food systems or farmed animal circumstances. What you're looking at here is an industrial level calf farm in the middle of the United States. By the way, this image itself, filmed by animal photojournalist Joanne MacArthur, is using things like drone footage because in certain parts of the United States, it's illegal to take photographs or, of facilities. and persons who are trying to document the harm being done to farmed animals can be convicted under domestic terrorism laws, right? So we have these industrial systems that are really pushing hard to prevent acknowledgement or even documentation of what we're doing in these circumstances. So from our vantage point, our laws regarding animals at this stage have not caught up with the science of animal sentience. And even our field of human-animal interaction, I would largely say, could, as mentioned in the beginning, could play a really significant role in beginning to talk about what we know about the lives, the emotional lives of animals in these circumstances. So as we start to think about, farmed animals in animal-assisted services, one of the primary therapeutic outcomes, I believe, could really be starting to work on this concept of interspecies justice. The well-known philosopher and humane educator Laurie Gruen refers to this work as entangled empathy. And what she means by that is that when we start to pay attention to these broader conditions that negatively affect the experience and flourishing of others, it has the ability to change the way we think and feel about it, right? We start to experience them differently. I think this could be potentially one of the major roles of thinking about farmed animals in animal-assisted services. But it really does have to be intentional, because the larger story is not a therapeutic one, but really one of quite callous disregard for animal well-being in many different circumstances. Most recently, the book of Brian Hare and Vanessa Woods, called Survival of the Friendliest, I think starts to speak to this. And Darwin supported this idea as well, that survival of the fittest tended to be related to those individuals who could learn to cooperate, who could learn to have sympathy and care and empathy and concern for others, not the ability to physically dominate them. So there's starting to become good understanding that these are building blocks to a healthier community and offer well-being for our communities and families as well. So in conclusion, to be human offers this opportunity to be humane. And I like that idea, that maybe that's the core of our mission in some ways, arguably. And to be humane honors the interconnectedness to health between humans, non-human animals, and the living world. So I'm going to wrap up here, and I'm totally open to questions. I wanted to just acknowledge that some of the images that you had here are available from or came from We Animals or We Animals Media. And if you don't know them as an organization, they have about something like 30,000 images taken by animal photojournalists around the world that are searchable and filterable for the purpose and are free, royalty free, for the use of persons who are working on behalf of animals. So you might check that out if you're doing a presentation and need a good image. So I think that's it for now. You can reach me at the University of Denver, and I'm at philip.tedeschi@du.edu. And thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Tedeschi, for that amazing presentation. So we have a few questions from the chat box. I'll read them quickly because of our time. So James Ayodeji is asking that when it comes to these intervention animals and animals showing emotions, does this concept, or should I say theory, apply to all animals or just some certain species or breeds of animals?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and there's other people in the conference. I know Michael's here somewhere, and many others who could probably answer that even better than I could. But what I'd like to say about that is I do believe that the limitation probably lies more on our ability to be observant, to understand the communication we're looking at in other animals. But I think the newest science would suggest that virtually all other animals are sentient, do have the capacity for deep cognition and emotion. Um, and the question, my colleague, Dr. Mark Beckhoff, uses the term anthropomorphic double talk, meaning we might only want to see animals when they suit us, right? And then we kind of don't see them when it's inconvenient for us to not observe them or not understand them. There's many things that when we look carefully, we see and we recognize. And they don't have to be human traits, human communication in order for us to recognize them. But I do think it does require an intentional, observant individual if we're likely to pay attention to them. But virtually animals in all categories of species have capacity to do this.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much. So I'm also going to read in, because of our time, just one question from the pre-conference questions. So we have Judah from Botswana. It said, have primates such as baboons and monkeys been used in therapeutic services? If yes, to what extent has it been as successful as cats and dogs?
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to maybe invite that for other people who might know more about that than I do. There are primates that have been used in varying therapeutic context, and I would say, from my knowledge of the circumstance, that it is not as common and probably not as successful as the incorporation of dogs in particular, probably. And part of that, being that, if dogs, for example, are now seen as having been maybe being the smartest social animal relative to human beings because we've been co-evolving alongside dogs longer than any other species. So dogs may recognize, for example, aspects of human emotion, changes in the human expression, those sorts of things. Whereas even maybe a more advanced or intelligent animal like an orangutan or a chimpanzee or other primates, even though they have the capacity maybe for more, high level cognitive capabilities, are less familiar in general with human beings, have not been socialized alongside humans as long or as intensively. So there's been a lot of problems in those interactions where those animals are in many ways, humanized in ways that are problematic for their welfare. Um, and it also has the potential of creating things like illegal animal trade issues where animals are bought and sold and captured for this purpose of putting them to work for human beings. And so dogs are probably the most common animal in terms of their successful integration into kind of human health environments. But there might be others that would have other opinions about that.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm seeing some more questions, but because of our time, we won't be able to take them all. The Professor Tedeschi has put his email up, so please feel free to reach out to him if you have more questions or you'd like to get clarity on some more aspects. And with that, we say a very big thank you to Professor Philip Tedeschi. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And keep posted. We will have a global declaration of animal sentience that will have the ability for those of you who agree with these concepts and ideas to be a signatory on this global document. And it should be available by the date of the conference coming up here in August. So I would welcome you reaching out to me directly, and also would certainly value your participation in the work we're doing.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks, Praise.
Yeah. So I'm going to go on and welcome our next speaker, and I will be reading her bio in a moment. So our next speaker is the founder and president for the International Institute for Animal-Assisted Play Therapy, which is an international organization that trains mental health and animal professionals worldwide. She holds degrees from the University of Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania State University. She is a licensed psychologist who holds certifications in play therapy, family therapy, animal behavior, and ethology. And she also specializes in the animal-assisted play therapy. She has authored dozens of books, manuals, articles, and chapters, including Animal-Assisted Play Therapy with Tracy Thompson, Maxwell Award for Best, and she has also gotten the Maxwell Award for Best Book on Human-Animal Bond and the Human Half-Dog Training collaborating with adults. She is an accomplished pianist and award-winning animal and nature photographer. Please join me to welcome Dr. Reese VanFleet for the next segment. Dr. Reese? All right. All right. So I'm going to be playing, Dr. Reese is in an area where she lost electricity. So she has a pre-recorded video that I'm going to be sharing with us in a moment.
I'm not hearing the sound. I'm here.
Okay.
But
Okay.
the sound is not.
It's not clear?
Okay, maybe I'll just play it from my end.
Okay.
Sorry, I've already lost electricity once this morning, so that's why I recorded this in advance.
Yes. Okay. Dr. Sandia will go ahead and play it from his end now. It seems I'm having trouble with my audio.
Sorry to complicate things. I am recording this previously because I live out in the country. It's not unusual for us to lose power. And lately we've had a lot of storms, and almost every day our power has gone out unpredictably. So I thought rather than be live and have our power go out, I would record it, and hopefully I'll leave enough time at the end if there's questions and answers, and I will be live for that part of things. So I'm going to just dive in and go as quickly as I can and cover a lot of ground, I think. My topic today is the animal's point of view in therapeutic services. And I have a subtitle, all that is written there. The picture is my next door neighbor. It's a dairy farm. And I have another farm down the road from us that we'll see a couple pictures from maybe later. The dog that's lying on our hill is the late, great Kiri, who is a wonderful inspiration for animal-assisted play therapy and for lots of other things. She was 17 years old at this time. I think she had her leg brace on at this point. But she was always interested in everything going on in the world. And so she was watching the farm next door. And so we watched with her. So I'm going to then just kind of move forward here. If I can. There we go. The description you've probably seen in my presentation before, so I'm not going to talk about it. This is some information about my background, kind of in short. I'm a psychologist, a play therapist, a certified dog behavior consultant, and a certified animal ethology and behavior instructor. So I walk in both the human world and the non-human animal world quite a lot. 48 years, I think it's close to 49 now, of actual experience doing a variety of different things. And I like to write a lot and mostly travel around and do a lot of training programs. I would like you to have a PDF version of this PowerPoint. And so at the top of the page on the left is my one of the email addresses that will reach me. Feel free to send me an email. If the conference can't give it to you, it's a lot of extra work for them, I think. I'm glad to send these out by email afterwards. And just in your subject line, write a barnyard and PDF, barnyard PDF in capital letters. That'll get my attention because I get a lot of emails, and then I'll send you the PDF of all this. And at the end slide, we also have my a couple different email addresses. They all end up in the same place. So that is just all I'm going to say about that. Copyright. We're going to talk about welfare issues with farm animals and also farm animals who are involved in animal-assisted services of one type or another. But a lot of what we say might go for farm animals in general and other animals as well. So I'll talk a little bit about my frame and animal-assisted play therapy. I'm going to be short with that. Then I'm going to talk about the challenges that we face, and a lot of it has to do with our awareness. And then we're going to talk about, I think I have 9 points to kind of increase our awareness and ways of kind of building our skills and other things that will help us be better, even better at ensuring animal welfare. So animal-assisted play therapy, there's a definition here. I'm not going to read through all these slides, but it's basically a form of mental health therapy, although it can also be used for medical purposes with allied health professionals and also with educators. There have been some studies done on all of those areas, but we're kind of in our infancy. It took a bunch of years to kind of figure out how we wanted to train people in this and all of that. We've been around for about 20 years. But it is an integrative, multidisciplinary program. It emphasizes relationships between people and animals, and it starts with our own relationships with our own animals that we then share with clients or students along the way. We are very much interested in having the animals engage with us voluntarily, so we use equipment very little of the time. We don't use equipment very much at all. We let the animals come and join us or walk away if they don't care to do what we're asking them to do. So we're really looking at their well-being. We're focusing on the relationships being reciprocal. So it's a two-way street. We listen to them. We communicate better with them in terms of what we want from them. And everybody needs training. The animals need to be prepared for this, even though it's a fun preparation and a fun job for most dogs. But also we need to have a lot of preparation, and that's more what I'm going to concentrate on. Okay, this is a book that Tracy Faw Thompson, who was basically my partner and still is through this process of developing the field of animal-assisted therapy. And she and I wrote this book. It won the Maxwell Award for the best book that year on the human-animal bond. And it's a big book with a lot of details in it, but it's been very well received. And it's now in Dutch and will soon be in Korean. This is a free PowerPoint you may use. It's in PDF format, but the link is here for it. It'll take you right to it as a free download. Entitled "Do Therapy Animals Enjoy Their Work? Here's how to find out." And there's pictures and and information throughout on how to determine if animals really are enjoying what we're asking them to do. It is actually a requirement in animal-assisted play therapy that they enjoy it and don't just tolerate it. And of course, not to dislike it, but that we're not going to ask them to do things. So this was also won an award. So that's free for you to use, and the information about using it is within it. We need to understand animal behavior so we can do better by them, and that includes behaviorism, affective neuroscience, and ethology, which I have kind of documented there. Just as a quick aside, B.F. Skinner, who is known for operant conditioning and other things, grew up in the first 12 years of his life in Susquehanna, Pennsylvania, which is also my hometown. And although I never met him, because he's older than I am, even though I never met him, my high school teachers, two teachers, two people that I knew, were childhood friends of his. And they had all these stories of Fred Skinner that they told us. So I know a different side of him in a way. And I also contributed some pictures of the town, which is a railroading town, to his archives through his daughter. I was in touch with her to do that, which was nice. These are the components we think of every time we intervene using animal-assisted play therapy. We think of the clients, we think of the animals, and what their personality and interests and choices and natural behaviors are. We think of our own preferred way of working and our own theoretical orientation. Where are we trained best to do the kind of work? And also the environment that we have in which to conduct the service that we want to provide. And all those are very important, and they change from time to time. But it's not that the clients prevail or the animals prevail, it's that they both need to be considered equally important with the whole thing. Okay, so we are, I think, fairly intrusive beings. We tend to have anthropocentric attitudes that lead us to crowd or intrude without really thinking about the animal. I think sometimes we just assume that they're just like us, and of course they're not. But we assume that about other people too. And while there's many things that we have in common, there are also cultural differences and religious differences and different things like that that sometimes we're not very good at paying attention to. Space is very important for animals, and especially for their sense of safety. So they have their own norms about what's okay and not okay, just like we do. And individual animals might have their own preferences in terms of how close or far away do they like to be touched or not like to be touched, things like that. There are hundreds, probably thousands of pictures online of therapy programs, animal-assisted therapy programs. And they're proudly displaying people intruding on animals. Now, probably their program is great, but it's interesting that they picked pictures to put on their website or on social media that show these intrusions, which suggests to me that they are not quite so aware of what they are doing. They're focusing on the animal perhaps, or on their clients, but maybe not so much on what did I just do that maybe created some tension or a problem of some sort, or happiness on the other hand. So we just have to raise our awareness of the animal point of view, and that's what I'm concentrating here. If you have done anything that I talk about in a negative manner, don't beat yourself up. We all have. We do the best we can, then we learn more, and then we do better. So I think that's the attitude I like us to have. I'm not here to criticize anyone or anything along those lines. Now, I've got some pictures that I've either pulled off the internet and disguised, or that I've taken myself and disguised, because I don't want to shame or embarrass or create bad feelings with anybody. So all of the pictures, the two pictures here, the first picture I put through an art filter and then did scribbling around on faces and so forth. But if you look at this dog who is facing away from us, there are 1, 2, 3, I think 4 hands, four different people touching this dog, and then there's a couple other hands kind of coming in. The camera person, whoever took this picture, was standing kind of where we're sitting looking at this picture. So this dog is pretty much surrounded, may or may not have liked it, but most dogs would not like to be crowded like that. That would be something that we'd have to pay attention to. The middle picture, I put the yellow faces on. All the kids in the picture were smiling and be very happy to be with this dog. But then you look at the dog, and I've done a close-up of the dog. That dog is not having the world's best time. It looks to me like a dog who is putting up with some things that are pretty uncomfortable. So there's the hand over the head. My own dogs, if I touch over their heads, even though I know them, if I do it without kind of working my way up to it, like up their neck or something, then they often blink a lot because they can't see what's going on up there. And again, there's 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 hands on that dog, and the mouth is shut. The eyes are kind of glazed over, maybe a little bit of a hard eye. The ears are backing down. There's signs that maybe this dog is stressed. There's not a lot of signs that the dog's having a good time. These are pictures I took and then ran through a filter, except for the horse picture. That was not mine. The baby goat, the young goat, the kid, look how the hand is around the goat's neck, and it's being held in place. I think the child that was holding this kid was not squeezing or anything. I mean, and the backhand looks fairly soft, just kind of holding the goat down though. But that goat isn't going to be able to go anywhere easily if that kid wanted to, if the goat kid. The chicken, not too keen on being picked up or held in that way, and you can almost imagine what's going to happen next. And hands on the face of the horse, which again, this is the one area one of 2 areas where they can't see, directly in front and directly in back. And we all tend to kind of head for that area of the horse. I've done it myself, not anymore. And then here is another child picking up a rabbit. Rabbits are extremely fragile. If this rabbit were to jump or hop or twist, or she dropped the rabbit could be injured, but so could she. So in our work, we do not let clients pick up any of the animals. And it's usually the small animals they're going for, and they're pretty vulnerable. So we just don't. We will help them if they want to interact with the animal. We'll do all kinds of things, but not pick them up. Okay, so when we look at pictures like this, the real question that we want to be asking more often is, how might this young goat feel? How might the chicken feel? How about the rabbit? How about the horse? We need to kind of sometimes train ourselves to pay attention to that in a way that maybe we wouldn't do naturally as we go along. Okay, so we have responsibilities all the way around. We have responsibilities in animal assisted services to our clients to give them the best we can give them. I've got it written out in more detail here. To our animals, to make sure that they can enjoy the interactions. And because we have conscripted them into this work, it's really on us to ensure that their welfare, well-being, and the interactions are actually beneficial and nice for them. And then finally, relationships are really, really critical. We believe and we value, is probably a better word, reciprocity in a relationship. So it is a two-way street. We're listening to each other. Sometimes we do what the animal wants to do. Sometimes we ask them to do what we want to do. But we try to create a positive model of a relationship for our clients. And that starts with our own animals that we might be including. And then we help our clients develop that kind of relationship too. And that becomes also a metaphor for the therapeutic relationship or the teaching relationship that they can expect from us. These are some great books. There are many, 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 many more, but I think building our understanding of different aspects of the animals that we're working with is really important. So these are just from people that I really respect and admire. Some of them, actually all of them, I would count as friends. But I think it's just, these are really, really good books that kind of help us understand a little bit more about, in this case, dogs, but you can find very similar books about horses, goats, rabbits, all different kinds of things. So here's a picture that was taken from a public Facebook discussion where some therapists were talking about how it's very valuable therapeutically to paint horses. There's a lot of people that believe that that's a good thing to do. We're just going to concentrate on this one. This was a group therapy program working with girl gang members who had trauma histories, you know, poor self-esteem, disrespect of each other. They missed school a lot. They bullied others. They were bullied. And the activity, they were told to paint their names on this pony as part of their interaction. So that's what the paint is, some of their names. And they reported in this discussion that the girls just loved doing this, which I imagine they did. But we still need to think, what about this pony's point of view? And so the next slide is where I do that. Even if this had treatment value, and I'm not sure it does, what does the pony get out of it? So I put on the right side here, the pony point of view. What about the body language of this horse? What kind of flooring? It's like really hard concrete flooring. There's a rope that appears to be attached to something on the wall. So is movement permitted at all? It doesn't look like much. Is there an exit route? I don't think so when you're tied to the wall. So how voluntary is this? What impact does any of this painting or cleaning of the painting have on the skin? And are we really treating this pony like a pony, or are we treating him like a canvas, an art canvas to write on? So from a treatment point of view, a treatment of the human point of view, I think we could look at this and say, I'm not sure the messages that we're giving this population of clients are really the ones we want to be giving. So it's kind of like we're not really treating this horse with respect. Of course, that can be defined different ways by different people, but we're not really treating this pony like a pony, like a sentient being that it is. And so how does this message match the treatment goals? If we want them to learn to be empathic and respectful of others, respectful of themselves, are we showing that with this activity? And I think sometimes we get caught up in what the activities are doing and we kind of lose the bigger picture. So there's a depersonalization that's going on here. And there's research and other people that have studied victimization and aggressive youth for many, many years. And one of the things they usually say is depersonalization is the opposite of empathy. And it's often part of victimization. So maybe that's not what we really want to be doing with an animal. And if we're using bullying an animal, which, you know, you might agree or disagree that that's what this is. I kind of see it that way. Is that going to treat the bullying of the humans that are being treated? So this is, again, let's look at these things a little bit more carefully. There's a great article, if I say so myself, but most of it was the work of Catherine Wenneker, Dr. Catherine Wenneker, on an example of how animal-assisted play therapy might work with children who abuse animals after being exposed themselves to family violence. And this was a case example. I consulted with her about it from time to time, the case that we wrote up. She did a fabulous job. Unbelievable things happened, and that's all written in this article. So I think, let's see, yeah, you've got the link there at the very top. So, you know, we don't necessarily start, if a child has a history of harming animals, that might not be the first thing we do, but I really think part of it is helping them learn how to have a relationship that's actually a real relationship with an animal, with this mutuality and reciprocity. So I've done this approach with 50 foster children and adoptive children who have family violence histories and who have tried to harm animals, and some have actually killed animals in the past, and have had very, very high percentage of successful clinical outcomes as reported by their foster parents or adoptive parents, and with a a number of them with a multi-year follow-up. So this is a case example that explains how that kind of works. Do animals have emotions? We used to say no, but they do. We just can't see them, but now we can. Dr. Jaak Panksepp has done a lot of work. He passed away a few years ago on affective neuroscience, mapping the neural connections, what happens with different emotions, and has identified 7 primary emotions that way. And I think that's really fascinating work, and I highly recommend, reading him. And he's got a few things on YouTube as well that are very interesting. They do react to conspecifics, emotional behaviors. So Josie, who's pictured here, was in the house, started barking her brains out. She was looking out the window. I couldn't see what she was looking at, but I always, when they start barking like that, then the other ones chimed in. They always were barking. I think Josie's the only one that knew what she was barking about, but they all reacted to each other's emotional vocalizations. Anyway, so I decided, they all started running around, and usually what I do is I get up, even though it's inconvenient, and I go and stand next to the animals or squat down next to the animals and try to see what they're looking at. And sometimes that helps me figure it out. In this case, couldn't figure it out. We went outside, and Josie came over by this maple tree that she's by, and was just, you can see her leaning forward and watching kind of intently. And there's cows. Those are actually longhorn cattle that are 2 houses away from us. It was about 700 meters away. And she kept watching them. She wasn't barking anymore because I was paying attention to what she was looking at and talking about it. And but she did look at me a couple of times like, what is this? Why are these cows there? Why are the cattle there? And what she noticed, it took me a while to figure it out, but they were in the quote unquote wrong field. They were usually in a field farther away, and she noticed they were closer to us than they usually were. I think that's an accurate interpretation of what she was noticing and having a reaction about. Also, I just put Mark Beckhoff's, I think it's the 2nd or 3rd edition of this book, who has been talking about animal emotions for a long time and never doubted them. But it's a very good book, and I can recommend that as well as Panksepp's work. Do animals react to human emotions? Yeah, we're pretty sure they do. There's more and more studies coming out, maybe not all animals, but there are certain species that certainly react to our emotions, especially the ones that are domesticated and live with us a lot of the time, or who are subject to our emotional reactions, different reactions. They do read our body language better than we read theirs, usually by a lot. They know every little move we make, sometimes I just play around with it just to see, oh, you just reacted. Was it because I did this, or did I did this other thing? And it's really kind of interesting to try to figure out. And I'm always surprised at, wow, they just noticed a small little thing. My body language, of course, is important to them because they depend on me, and they want to keep on my good side, I guess, too, although I do try to use all positive methods as much as I can. Okay, so they can react in their own ways, though, to what we might be expressing. It might not be always what we think it is, and sometimes we misunderstand that. That picture of Jake, there were some people in a workshop that were screeched really high. He grabbed the duck toy and was shaking it around and running around and running around and running around. So that was the screeching I've learned since I've observed it since, is kind of a trigger for him to get the zoomies and kind of act a little goofy, which is okay, but I don't want him going to that. So an over arousal reaction. This is Maisha. She was my first dog, I think, as an adult. A Kazan. And at the time that she was alive, I was working out of a home office, like part of the house was an office where I saw clients, and she would be around and sometimes come into the room. I was not doing any kind of formal work with her, but some clients liked her and wanted her to be around. So I worked with one she was a traumatized adult, lots and lots of awful things had happened to her. And she often cried as she was talking about, her triggers and the trauma reactions and all of that. And whenever she started crying, it wasn't like noisy or anything, but you could tell that she was upset. I could see that she was upset. Maisha would come over and put her head on the woman's knee, just rested her head on her knee. And it was really sweet. And the woman loved it. And the woman could pet her. That calmed her down and everything was fine. So I've seen people interpreting that kind of behavior as, oh, Maisha was trying to help heal her. Maisha realized she had trauma and was going to help heal her. I don't necessarily ascribe to the thought that animals can tell all these different things about us emotionally. I think they can tell our emotions, but can they read them at a human level? I'm not so sure. I think there's lots that we don't know yet about all of that, but they can react to them. And yes, sometimes they are so close with us, they're trying to make us feel better. And so I'm not ruling that out entirely. However, it's putting a lot of responsibility on the animals when we say, oh, the horse realized that this client needed certain behavior, or the horse realized this, or the dog realized this. I don't know as we know that yet, but I do know a lot about Maisha. I knew her really well. And actually, it wasn't, she was bothered by the crying. She was a very loving, nice, wonderful dog, but it created anxiety for her because I could see it in her body language. So she went over and put her head there, but then I could see how she approached the woman and how she would look kind of at the woman or look at me. I didn't know then what I know now, or I might have interrupted it a little bit differently, but it's okay. She wasn't like out of her mind with anxiety, but she did offer some appeasement behaviors, like, don't worry, it's okay, I'm not going to be a problem here. So she offered these appeasement behaviors along with sort of some of these initial mild stress signals. But I think maybe it was her attempt to stop the crying. I might be wrong on that. And we don't always know because we can't read their mind. We have to have context. And my context was I knew this dog really well, and I was there to kind of observe what was happening. But even then, don't know for sure. So other things that we want to pay attention to for animal welfare in any of the work that we might do is to look at natural behaviors in natural environments. That's what a lot of ethology is about. And it's the idea of how do we let our animals be who they are? How do we let them be true to themselves while we are including them in some of the work that we're doing, rather than trying to turn them into an animal with a whole bunch of new behaviors that we're going to use in one way or another. I'd rather have them be themselves. I'll train them in a few additional behaviors that might be useful in our work, but I don't want to go too far away from who they are and what they're comfortable with. So let dogs be dogs, let pigs be pigs, whatever they are. And we're looking at the species level, a breed level, because there's selective breeding is sometimes for various behaviors, and also the individual level. We want to kind of help them be themselves or allow them to be themselves, and then figure out how that fits with what we're asking them to do. So on the left, I have some things we want to avoid: too much work, break time, not a good idea all the time or much of the time. Horses being taken indoors, say to a nursing home without other horses around. So going indoors is an odd environment for a horse. And secondly, having no friends around, no horse friends around, that creates a lot of stress. They're not with their herd anymore. So we have to really think about who are horses as prey animals, as herd animals, and what might that be like for them. The use of equipment that's designed to control, we try to minimize that or don't use it at all, because most equipment is designed for control purposes. And sometimes we need it, but not always. Now, I understand if you're going into a hospital or school or something, yeah, you need to have a leash on a dog or something like that. But if I'm in my play therapy room or in an office, I don't, so my dogs go without all that stuff most of the time. Preventing horses from grazing has been tried. And why would we want to do that? And we'll talk about that in just a moment. It's okay if in the middle of a therapy session, a horse decides to do some grazing, because it's up to us. We're the therapists, and it's up to us to kind of help our clients either watch it, learn from it, deal with feelings if they're feeling rejected or abandoned, all of that. We can also like prevent pigs from having their mud bath. Things we want to do is give lots of space where humans don't follow, give them an exit route, try to stay in their natural environment if it's possible, and observe the animals first to see what are your natural behaviors, what are your interests. Let me see if I can build that into what my work is. This was on TV. I just took a TV shot, but it was a visiting pony in an unnatural environment of a TV studio. And they were taking these, there were two ponies that were going into nursing homes. But if you look at the body language here, it's not happy. If you look at the equipment, it's one of those knotted halters that are actually designed to go into the kind of highly innervated parts of the face so that it has more control. And it's also being held tightly, the rope. And sometimes you see them in belly bands and booties and all that kind of thing. But there's also the sounds and smells of the environment that are not at all natural for horses. So if there's a way to get, say, the nursing home residents outdoors where they can interact or something, I mean, that would be probably preferable from the animals' points of view. This was an equine program that I ran at a local college, and these were with the graduating seniors. Who it was all about transitioning to grad school or to work. And so we did a bunch of things with horses. And I asked them to move the horses from one field to the next without any equipment. And at first they were puzzled by that, but then they remembered we talked about synchrony in horses, how they follow what other horses do. And the group said, how about we try? We'll get on either side of them and we can walk and run and do things. And so that's what they did. And the next thing you know, the horses are going with them and kind of trotting along with them. So that was, again, they were able to use a natural behavior of horses and think like a horse in order to get the horses to go from one field to another. So for the rest of my talk, I want to just talk about what can we do to ensure animal consent, choice, and well-being. This is one of the horses I work with regularly. It's a Highland pony. It's not mine, but I am very fortunate to be able to go and hang out with the horses that are in this, it's like a farm bed and breakfast kind of place, and it's wonderful. So the first thing, these are things that we want to do to kind of do better on the welfare side. Advocate always for the animal. They are our conscripts. They are vulnerable, but they might not show it. A lot of animals don't show it when they're feeling vulnerable very clearly, because that's like flagging to other animals like, hey, I'm a mess here. Now's a good time to attack me, whatever it might be. So I'm thinking prey animals and predators. We always want to advocate for their needs, and I really mean always, because I can explain to a client, hey, give me just a second. Here's what's going on with the animal. And if they can help me, I can ask them for help. If I want them to step aside, I'll ask them to step aside. But I think first and foremost, we want to avoid exposure to stressful situations or see that stress happening at the earliest moment so we can be proactive about how we're going to handle that. We can watch the animal's body language. I think we have to learn to do that fluently for any species we work with. So each body part, the total body, the collection of all those body parts, and looking at the context that will help us start to understand why the animal might be looking that way. And then we can remove the animals from a situation. Again, help with the clients if that's going on. What if a vulnerable client grabs a dog around the neck, and they're really doing a stranglehold? The source of many facial dog bites in children. The way I can handle that is, I know you really want to hug the dog, but let me show you what Jake likes way better than hugging. And it's his way of hugging. And I can show about like scratching on the shoulder, scratching his neck, maybe doing a hand touch. I've labeled that kiss me, where they put their nose to a child's hand, something like that. We can help. So second, think like a dog, horse, goat, guinea pig, whatever species you're working with. You try to look at every situation from the animal's point of view. You want to use your empathy. And we can get into a physical position to try to see what's going on, but you're trying to get into their sensory experience of whatever is happening. What does this situation look like, smell like, sound like, feel like to them? This is Jake's first time going through a tunnel. It was during a workshop where he was helping out in animal-assisted play therapy. He's usually a very bold, just heads for the, whatever he wants. I'm not bold in a bad way, in a good way. But look at his face and his ear position and the furrows between his eyes. And I mean, you can almost see the wrinkles there. So he was really quite uncertain about it. And so we talked about it as a group, and then we thought, well, how can we make this more comfortable for him? Oh, we can make the tunnel smaller and see if he goes through it more readily. And that worked like a charm. So we could do that. What about pigs? I like pigs a lot. I think they're really quite remarkable animals. I like a lot of species. Extremely smart, learn quickly. They're active. They like contact with each other. What do? They root, they forage, they explore, they wallow. They keep their living areas tidy and clean. A lot of people are surprised at that. And they can be quite vocal with some interesting sounds. These are two kuni pigs that were on a farm type environment where we were invited to come and do our animal-assisted play therapy workshop in Oregon. And it's a wonderful place. And we started, they had just gotten these kuni pigs. And so I said, let's just watch them the first day, because we're there for 4 days. And so we observed them from over a fence, and then we observed them being fed, and that's when I took that picture. Then we wanted to do what we always try to do with all the animals, is let them approach us, and then we can do some consent testing or consent asking of them. So we can make ourselves available to them, but we don't need to, kind of be intruding in their space as we go along through all of this. So Jerry, who is my co-trainer for this workshop, sat down, and that pig came over to her, and then she was able to touch the pig, and he kind of stayed around with her. Same thing with the other pig, was with one of our participants. We have permission to use their pictures. And she started scratching, doing a little consent work, and then stopped. And the pig didn't go away, so she scratched a little bit more. The next thing you know, we flopped over in front of her and said, okay, have at it. You've got the magic touch. So that was asking for consent. Consent is very important. I think I might have skipped past the book. Erin Jones's wonderful book on consent work. I have that on one of the slides. Maybe it's still coming, but I don't think it is. Maybe it is, I don't know. Anyway, supply their basic needs. I mean, this is for things like sleep, undisturbed downtime, enjoyment. Think about what do they need as a species. Like with Lauren Fraser talked about the 3 F's for horses, their basic needs: friends, meaning other horses, forage, and freedom to move around. So that's important. And the One Health, One Welfare work is really important. Okay, so in a dog's life, you can this is a slide, I won't talk about it, but except to say they need a lot of sleep, 14 to 17 hours a day, which is a big chunk of the day. And so if we are we're going to work with dogs, we don't want to work with them all day long. We want to give them things that's interesting to do, but this is maybe how their day might be an approximate day in the life of a dog. We don't want to interfere with the basics. Horse's life, they absolutely need to graze. We've already talked about that. They might walk 15 to 25 miles a day just grazing. So they're moving, they hang out with their herd, they do all these things. Here were 2 horses of Tracy's that were playing. Cat's life, they like heights. So there's Boots and Bears surveying their kingdom. Those are cats. And then 4th, we want to provide opportunities for seeking and play. So the seeking, this comes out of Panksepp's work. The seeking is exploration, anticipation, those kind of things. All these were animals looking for something. I won't go into the details, but also play. And seeking and play both help offset some of the more negative feelings that might be out there. Here's play. I spend time with bears in the wild in Alaska, photographing. So I put in a couple of those photographs. They're completely wild. They're Alaskan brown bears. Here on the top are my neighbors on the other side, which are the longhorn cattle, playing. And I don't know how they do it, but they know whether they have some sense in terms of where their horns begin and end, and they're careful and they know how to do it. So good for them. Goats butt heads, that kind of thing. Highlight this book, Gordon Burkhart's book, The Genesis of Animal Play. Fantastic book, really fantastic. Let them use their preferred senses and build them into activities and interventions. So dogs and horses both have really good noses, and we can do scent activities with them. The seeking system, hide and seek. I love that with attachment disrupted children. They hide, and this dog in particular likes to go look for them. Taste and seeking, working together. So here's a child and the dog doing a game where we roll the treat down the tube and the dog catches it. And there's lots of nice little adjustments to that. This is Anna Burke from Tasmania, who just hangs out with her cows, with the cattle. We want to maximize consent, agency, and choices, all of these things. And we train using positive methods. We don't need to be punishing. We don't need to use pressure and release. There are alternatives to that work well without getting into a big thing about it. But this horse on the left was blowing bubbles in the water on the top of the thing. I like seeing that. The other horse in the middle was approaching Dr. Mary Rotier, who's one of our instructors. And I was just doing pay attention to me with the three dogs. At that time, they did have equipment on because they were going outside with some of the workshop people who might not have the same handling or know how to get their attention like I do. Okay, just a couple more here. Asking consent. Oh, here's Erin's book. Really, really important book. And even though it's about dogs, I think it's very thought-provoking. We can think about it with any species that we might live or work. And again, I've already mentioned, you can kind of ask the question, even touch or scratch for a few seconds, and then stop and say, do you like that? And that's what this woman is doing. Giving a little scratch, stopping. You can see there's no equipment there. They're still hanging out with her. She must be doing something that feels okay to them. But we want to watch their body language, and the animal can say no at any time. This is my uncle in the 50s and 60s, had a Hereford farm, and this bull, Geronimo, he and the Geronimo had an amazing relationship. And my uncle used a lot of scratching with the Geronimo because Geronimo liked it, and he would nuzzle him back on the head. But my uncle kept his nails on one hand longer so he could scratch Geronimo. And I was pretty little at this time, but it still is a good lesson. So we want to maximize their voluntary participation and always provide exit routes. And I've kind of already mentioned that. This horse voluntarily walked up to these students. The pig came in kind of from the back entry point, which isn't very big, and we just chose to be with those people. That's after we had done some fun things together, and the dog was looking for where the people went as well. For farm animals, I mean, all of this is important for animals that are involved in our professional work with us, but it's just for farm animals, whether they're involved in animal-assisted anything or not, we can have better relationships with them. And they benefit from having choice in their lives and predictability in their lives. We know that's related to health and a lot of other things. And cooperative care is very interesting. If you're not familiar with it, I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but they do it with zoo animals, but it's giving animals a choice to participate in their own care rather than our kind of, okay, now you're going to get your nails cut, whether you like it or not. Finally, I want to talk about letting them be who they are. We have some agency And this is a dog called Decker, so I call this Deckering. Decker lives with Ann Rogers. She's a great dog trainer in Ireland. She's a lovely, lovely person. And to give her permission to use these pictures, Decker loves to swim. He loves to swim. And she's got a million pictures of Decker swimming in all weather. And you can see it's probably not the nicest weather with Ann's pictures on the left. Ann will take him out so he can swim. And he goes way out. You can see his head in the water on the second picture, on the right picture. He swims back and forth, and then she can pull him in, and then they might head home. She does that all the time. I love that because this dog is probably healthier, and he's an older dog, and he just has a great life. So here's Decker going out on a path, Decker on a big tree, but it's my definition of decorating is regularly giving animals lots of natural agency and adventures that they love. I think that's a great way to go. And here's my contact information. Again, you can get in touch with me and I'll be glad to send you the PowerPoint. Thank you very much for your attention. And I think I've left a few minutes anyway for some questions. And there I am.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Rees, for that amazing presentation.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. And all right. So, excuse me. Okay, it seems, and I think you have been answering them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just
So
trying.
we have a question from Late Soccer. Can you hear me?
I can now. You were breaking up a moment ago.
Okay. So a question from Late Soccer. Aside from a formal behavioral observation, are there any other means of animal welfare evaluation that you would recommend, such as a reliable checklist or physiological indicator?
Okay, and I missed maybe an important word, a checklist or a way of assessing what, just animals in general or emotions, or both?
Yes, animals in general.
I'm sorry, you're kind of flipping around on my screen. That's my problem with internet.
Oh, I'm trying to open the chat.
You're doing a little dance for me.
Oh, I'm trying to
that.
open the chat to pick the question.
Okay, I'll give a general answer, and then if anybody wants to talk, separately, I'm glad to do that. The way we, in our work, we use what we call a goodness of fit approach, which has a concept from child development. And what we want to do is match the animal personality and their preferences to what we ask them to do. So it's kind of the opposite of a way a lot of therapy programs might do things, where they, is this animal suitable for this job? Well, in play therapy, there's so many different ways of including the animals, or even in just daily life. I'm working on another book on that right now. If we get to know who the animal really is as a species, as a breed, if we know what the breeds are, and as an individual, then we can build what we do around that. Now I've developed what's called an animal appropriateness scale. It's kind of like a personality test. There's more, we're working on the metrics for that right now. Suzanne Clothier, who's a well-known dog trainer, has the Clothier Animal Response Assessment Tool, which also looks at all these different features of animals after multiple observations of them to kind of determine, what senses do they use? What's their energy level like? What do they choose to do with their time if we let them? So there's ways to kind of assess animals a little bit differently than we have in many other types of animal assisted services. And that's what we have been working on for a long time. And then we can say, how do we build that into the process, rather than how do we get the animal to fit what we want? How do we do what we do with our clients or students with who the animal is? And I think it's I think it's a really useful way of looking at things. If you want more information, I think I just wrote an article about it that was published, and I have that on the IIAAPT.org website in the articles section. I'll put that in the chat after we're done.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Rees. So we'll be taking one question from the pre-conference questions. And this is from Marilinda Ebere Ogwuche in Nigeria. So she said, are there specific mental health conditions where animal-assisted therapy has proven to be more impactful than traditional methods alone?
Good question. And I'm not sure we have the answers for that very clearly yet. My belief is if you can get in the mindset of what are the goals for any given client? You know, they might have the goals, they might have a diagnosis, but I think more functionally, like what does this person need to function better, to be happier, to be able to, you know, go to school or whatever it might be. So I'm going to think about what are the goals that the person has. And I honestly, I think because I even work with people, adults and children who have harmed animals, I am not going to start off involving a live animal with them. There's work that needs to be done first before that person is really ready. But it's been very, very beneficial. Once we can help them develop a healthy attachment relationship is really what we're kind of working toward. But you know, there's multiple things we can do maybe before we get to that point with a live animal. But there's a lot of people that'll say, no, never use a live animal with that population. Well, how are they going to ever learn to have the right kind of relationship with them? So to me, that's kind of, you know, there's usually a trauma case with attachment problems and things like that. So because of the way I think, which is not a very, even though I'm a psychologist, I'm not very focused on diagnoses. I'm looking more at who is this person? What do they need? And that's something I work out with the person. At the same time, I'm thinking, who is this animal that I might want to potentially, this is my excuse for having lots of animals because they have different personalities and interests. And then beyond that, I'm looking at what environment can I work in and how do I usually work with a particular problem as a psychologist or play therapist or whatever it might be. So all those things I'm thinking of at once. And that's what we train, you know, some of the people that have been through our trainings in different parts of the world to do the same thing. And it seems to work really well because it's very practical, but it also really includes in thinking about the animal just as much as thinking about the human needs, the human animal needs. I'll just say one thing, though, and I've written it, but the most important thing we can do, I think, if we want to narrow it down to one, learn the body language of whatever species you're working with and learn it fluently. So you can see in the moment, oh, I just saw that little ear flick. What's going on? Did that, you know, whatever the species is, I think that makes a world of difference. And we can stop this, you know, putting them in a stressful situation way earlier than we often do.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Rees. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. I'm delighted to be here. I loved it all so far, and I'll continue to.
All right. So it seems some people have some more questions in the chat, but because of our time, we won't be able to answer everybody right now. But Dr. Rees will be in the chat. So drop your questions in the chat and she can give you a response, or you can send her an email and she'll be very happy to respond to that. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Rees.
Thank you, Praise.
All right. So we're going to be moving to the next speaker with the topic attachment to caprine companions and exploring the human-goat relationship. Our speaker first became interested in human-animal interactions while working on a doctorate in psychological studies in education at Temple University in the late 1980s. She published a dissertation under the title loneliness, and pet ownership among single women. Our research has addressed topics such as animals as a source of social support, relationships with cats, and attachments to various species and interactions with farm animals. She is a member, sorry for that. She is a member of the International Society for Anthrozoology and has served on the ISA's board of directors. She is retired but continues to be involved in human-animal interaction research. She currently lives in Silver City, New Mexico, with her two cats, Muffin and Orange Julius. Please join me to welcome Dr. Lee Zasloff.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to attempt to share my slides here. So just one moment. Ooh, I think I may have, not sure what happened here. I'm trying to get into, there we go. Okay, can you see my slide? Praise, can you see my?
Yes, Dr.
Okay.
Lee. Yes, we can hear
Okay,
it.
all right, thank you very much. All right, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world. This is my first conference of the human-animal interactions put on by Dr. Sunday, and I am just delighted to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this outstanding conference. So today I'll be talking about the relationships between people and goats, looking particularly at the attachment between people and caprine companions. So I'm going to explore these three areas: how people view their goats, and especially if they view the goats as pets; how the human-goat relationship fits with the attachment theory of John Bowlby; and how the attachment impacts what I call the friend-food dilemma, the conflict that many goat owners experience about using their goats for food, especially meat. So before I go on, I just want to mention that I am so glad I was preceded, by the talks on the animal perspective in human-animal interactions. I'm going to talk about the human perspective, and I'll be showing lots of images of people and goats as well as other animals. And I just want to say that it is, of course, imperative that the animals' welfare and health and well-being always be considered in any kind of interaction. So the relationship between people and goats is a long-standing one. Archaeological findings suggest that goats and sheep were hunted by Neanderthals in the Zagros Mountains of Western Iran and modern-day Turkey, the area known as the Fertile Crescent. It's believed that the domestication of goats occurred about 10,000 years ago as our human ancestors transitioned from hunting wild goats to managing their movement and engaging in selective breeding. Goats were the first livestock species domesticated to provide humans with milk, meat, fiber, and fuel. Pottery remains from the 6th to 4th millennia BC indicate that goats were used for milk production in Britain and Eastern Europe during that period. Today, there are around 1 billion goats around the world, providing milk, meat, fiber, and serving other human needs. But today, many goats serve another purpose, that of companionship. So we're going to look particularly at the emotional connection or attachment between people and goats and how relationships with goats may benefit people. Attachment has been one of the most widely studied factors in the human-animal interactions research. Countless studies have examined the effects of pet attachment on the physical, psychological, emotional, and social health and well-being of their caretakers. Although the results have often been mixed, many studies have found a connection between pet attachment and improved physical health, as well as loneliness and depression. Studies have found that attachment to a pet can elicit strong emotions, feelings of nurturance, and a sense of being loved and trusted. We feel committed to and responsible for our pets. We play with them, share food with them, and sleep with them. They're considered to be important members of the family who we often think of as our children, even referring to them as our babies. They're a source of comfort when we're feeling upset or worried. And of course, when they die, we grieve as we would the loss of any beloved family member. However, the research on human-animal relationships in general and attachment to animals in particular has focused mainly on dogs and cats. This isn't surprising since dogs and cats comprise the vast majority of animals we live with and think of as companions. Birds, reptiles, and also horses have also been included in some studies. However, farm animals have largely been ignored in the human-animal interactions literature, with a few exceptions, such as studies of children interacting with animals in petting zoos, studies showing how interactions with stock persons affects the welfare of food animals, studies of residential programs for children, such as Green Chimneys in New York, where animals are a routine part of the therapeutic program. Studies in Norway, where psychiatric patients help out at real working farms, have found that farm animal-assisted interventions can help to relieve clinical depression. And a study in the US, found that young people with serious mental health issues, and people with dementia all benefited in many ways from interacting with animals at care farms. However, no studies that I know of have specifically explored the emotional attachment between people and farmed animals. So, as a researcher and a person with goats, I wanted to learn about this aspect of people's relationships with goats. To do so, I conducted an online survey of 392 people, mostly from 46 US states, as well as people from Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. 89% of them were female, and the average age was 49. First, to learn about how people view their goats, the survey respondents were asked if they consider all, some, or none of their goats to be pets. 90% of the goat owners said that at least some of their goats are pets. More than 56% said that all of their goats are pets, and fewer than 10% said that none of their goats are pets. A thematic analysis of the responses generated 5 things concerning pet status. First, for many people, the goats are clearly pets who are considered to be friends, companions, and family members, as reflected in these comments. We got the goats to be pets. We take them for walks on the property along with our dogs. They help my husband on projects in the barn and are generally integrated in our life. All 4 goats are pets. 1 has extensive house privileges, and 2 volunteer as therapy pets. And we only have goats as pets. We have no intent to breed, milk, etc. I cannot help but become attached to these interesting creatures. So for many people, the goats that aren't expected to perform any kind of job are pets. But what about the goats that are expected to produce in some way? Some people see no conflict viewing their goats equally as working animals and pets, as shown in some of these comments. They're all pets, companions, and friends. They're also working animals who help us backpack with children and bad backs. They give us milk, too. They're for personal use, but they're also pets. I love them and I will never let them go, not even when they stop producing. But until then, I'll take advantage of the milk they supply. And these are working pets. Some goats provide fiber, which we spin, and does provide milk, but they're all bottle babies and need lots of love and attention every day. But for other people, the goats can't be both pets and producers. For these folks, goats that are expected to produce milk, breed kids for sale, take honors in the show ring, and those that may end up in the meat freezer are livestock and not pets, although they may be cared for as if they were pets. And while some people are quite comfortable making a clear distinction between pets and working animals, others seem to have a difficult time making this distinction, as shown in some of these comments. Some are sort of pets, but all are looked at from a rancher's point of view. I cannot support any animal simply because she is cute. This question is kind of hard. I love my goats, but at the same time, they're not really pets. I consider a pet to be an animal that I keep for no economic purpose. We keep our goats for an economic purpose, but we're attached to them as well. For some people, the goat's status as pets has to be earned, such as these particular comments show. I have a commercial dairy, so each animal is expected to produce at a profitable level. A couple have been in the herd many years and have earned retirement or pet status. Some are pets, meaning that I will never sell them and keep them into old age. Their personalities are wonderful, they milk very well, and are show quality. So having 3 very good reasons to keep them makes them pets. Although there are goats that I like more than others, the goats here work for a living. There are a few retired does. Some are bred yearly and a few are not. They did their share during their productive lives and deserve a dignified retirement. And finally, and I think the one I found most interesting was that some people seem to let the goats decide for themselves whether they're pets. For example, people said, we have owned or known them, those that are pets, longer and have developed a relationship with individual goats. Some of our goats will never be pets, as they are not so inclined. Having so many goats, I find that some are more willing to interact with people than others. The ones that prefer not to be pets are respected for that choice, as well as the ones that do like to be pets. None of mine are pets, they are livestock. Some, however, have decided that they want to have a relationship with me more than just being fed. Some have stronger personalities or personalities that a human would want to interact with. I think there are some goats that are happy to have people around. To summarize then, goats that are friends, companions, and family members who are not expected to produce in any way are definitely pets. For some people, goats may still be pets even if they do have a job. And in some cases, goats earn their pet status by being good producers, and sometimes the goats themselves decide if they want to be pets. Now we come back to the specific question of attachment. The concept of attachment was proposed by British psychologist and psychoanalyst John Bowlby, who defined it as a lasting psychological connectedness between human beings. Initially, it referred specifically to the bond between an infant and its mother or primary caregiver. Later on, the idea was expanded to apply to significant others throughout the lifespan, including attachment in friendships and in adult romantic relationships. Bowlby believed that there are 4 key characteristics of attachment. First, the attachment figure serves as a safe haven who relieves distress and provides comfort, encouragement, and support. Second, the attachment figure serves as a secure base, helping to increase a sense of security that allows the person to explore the world and take risks. Proximity maintenance has to do with wanting to be physically close to the attachment figure in times, especially of particular need or stress. And finally, the person experiences separation distress when the attachment figure is unavailable, either temporarily or permanently. With regard to people and their pets, attachment is generally viewed as the emotional bond between people and their animal companions, where the animal serves as a comforting attachment figure for the person. So do goats serve as attachment figures that meet the characteristics described by John Bowlby? An analysis of responses to the question, what are the positive aspects of having goats, revealed the following. As a safe haven, people said, all my worries go away when I spend time with them. They give you a good laugh when you really need it. Goats have given me a reason to keep living. And therapy, they're my therapy. As a secure base, people have said they teach patience and responsibility to kids and adults alike. One person said, they get me out of my own head and out of the house. I'm disabled and had given up on life pretty much before I got goats. And goats allowed me to meet some wonderful people who have found their own source of independence and joy because of their goats. This camaraderie is an important part of goat keeping, one that I did not expect. And for proximity maintenance, people said they're very calming, great fun to be with. They trust me, follow me around, gather close, and ask for tenderness. When I'm sad or upset, I go sit with the goats and they cheer me up and give me a better mood. All my worries go away when I spend time with them. Plus, they make me laugh. Far as separation distress, one person said, when my favorite goat died, it was more of a loss than when my mother died. Even failed marriages and deaths of friends have not ripped my heart and soul as much as losing my two favorite goats this year. I am grieving and will never forget them. Last summer, I had to euthanize one of my 6 goats. I have made this decision for many pets in the past, but Spike is like burying a human. 5 months later, I am still crying and heartbroken over this, and I anticipate it will never fade with time. It seems clear then that goats can serve as attachment figures by cheering people up and making them feel good, teaching responsibility and providing meaningful activity, making people laugh and play, and facilitating human connections. And when they die, people grieve them deeply. Finally, we come to the question of how attachment impacts decisions about eating goat meat, what I call the friend food dilemma. I wanted to know if there was anything the respondents did to avoid becoming attached to the goats if they were going to be used for meat. This brings us to what I call the friend food dilemma. And I want to say that I'm a vegan, but I found this an extremely interesting topic. In fact, very surprising in many ways. As we've seen, people become strongly attached to their goats, even if the goats are expected to produce. But what about goats that are destined to be dinner? Before we get more into the friend food dilemma, I want to talk about a related issue that you might be familiar with, the meat paradox. People who are both animal lovers and meat eaters often experience the meat paradox, the conflict they feel when they enjoy eating meat, but know that eating meat involves causing harm to animals. The July 2016 issue of Scientific American Mind magazine printed an excellent article on the meat paradox. So this is a topic that's gotten a lot of attention. The meat paradox is one example of the psychological phenomenon that has to do with cognitive dissonance. The concept of cognitive dissonance was proposed in 1957 by psychologist Leon Festinger. This occurs when we have two conflicting ideas, particularly a belief that conflicts with our behavior. Here's an example that you may be able to relate to. Imagine that you're on holiday. And after the main course, you're served a beautiful slice of cheesecake. Many of you will probably think, yum, cheesecake. At the same time, you may have a conflicting thought. I really don't want to gain weight on this trip, or I've been doing well at cutting out sugar. How are you going to resolve the cognitive dissonance you're experiencing? In fact, you'll do one of two things. You may change your behavior and have fruit instead, or you'll rationalize your behavior by changing the way you think about the situation. I deserve it. I've been so good. I'll have the cake and we'll exercise more tomorrow. Quite a few studies have looked at how people resolve the meat paradox. They may view the animals they eat as less worthy of moral concern. They may also use what's called linguistic camouflaging. You never eat a cow or a pig. You're having bacon for breakfast or beef for dinner. It's interesting, though, that this doesn't apply to birds. People eat chicken, turkey, duck, and pheasant, although we refer to them collectively as poultry. Another way of dealing with the meat paradox is modifying our behavior in some way. We may only eat meat from animals that have been humanely raised, or we may only buy eggs labeled cage-free. And of course, we use avoidance. We don't think about where meat really comes from. To most people, it's just a package at the supermarket. Now, coming back to the survey, 97% of respondents said they're emotionally attached to at least some of their goats. 40% didn't raise any goats for meat. 38% said they eat their own goats. 30% said they avoid becoming attached to some of the goats. 22% said they sell the goats for meat, but don't eat the meat themselves. An analysis of the comments generated 5 ways that people avoid attachment to goats that will end up as dinner. They treat the goats differently. The goats get food names or no names at all. The owners maintain mental detachment. They keep emotional distance, and they limit their interactions with the goats. Let's look at some of the comments. So meat goats are treated differently. People said things like, I keep my kids in groups and sell the males at a young age before they develop too much of a personality. Or I will not bottle feed a taco wether. A wether is a neutered male goat that's called a taco. Meat goats get food names or no names. So no names for the boys who aren't going to be breeders. Or it's something silly like Tuesday, Wednesday, or lunch. It helps to name them things like goat burger, so the reminder is constant. My rule with the bucklings, the young males, do not name and do not kiss the boys. The owners maintain their emotional, the owners maintain mental detachment. I sell all my bucks at market. When they're born, I have it set in my mind that I will not be keeping them, so I do not become attached. I keep in mind why I can't get attached. And owners keep their emotional distance. I avoid getting attached to the boys at birth. I know what their destiny is, so I attach double affection onto the kids I plan to keep. We cannot get attached to the meat goats as that would make it impossible for us to sell them for meat or eat them ourselves. And owners limit their interactions with the goats. Don't name them, don't pet them, and generally don't treat them like the others. Meat goats go in the back pasture where I'll have little contact with them. I do not spend time with the boar goats because I know they will be sold for meat or put in our freezer for meat. It's hard to eat a friend. We had to once. I kept telling myself that he is blessing us with his meat, and now he is part of us forever. So now that we have some understanding about the human-goat relationship and how these animals contribute to people's lives, what are the implications for the therapeutic value of goats and other farm animals? As we've seen, farmed animals can be an important part of the family and social network, contributing to people's physical, psychological, and social well-being. Being aware of the strong emotional connections between people and many different species gives us a broader understanding of the role of animals in human health and well-being. Efforts could be made to incorporate a wider range of species into animal-assisted activities and animal-assisted therapy programs of all kinds. Perhaps we can create new opportunities for therapeutic programs with farm animals and working with local farms and programs such as 4-H. And people with dementia may particularly benefit from farm animal visits. So I'm going to conclude my talk here, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for that amazing presentation.
Thank you very much.
All right. So I'm just going to go through the chat box to be sure. Hold on, I think I'm echoing. Okay, so Francis is asking, how can someone improve the bond between their goats?
Well, goats are amazing animals. People describe their goats, and from my I don't have any goats any longer, but from my personal experience, they are funny and engaging and cute and hilarious. So if you just let the goats be themselves, then it's not hard to develop a relationship. But not all goats are like that. I had one goat who was kind of a bully. He was wonderful as a baby, but he grew up kind of a bully. So I just let him be as he was. So I think the most important thing, as with any animal, is to spend time with them. As people in my study said, sit with them, let them come to you, let them be who they are. And I think that you will automatically, naturally develop a wonderful relationship with your goats. I've lost the sound. I'm not hearing you. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So there are some more questions in the chat. Because of our time, once again, we won't be able to answer each of them. But Dr. Lee will be more than happy to go through the chat and answer your questions. So you can please leave them in the chat or send an email. All right. So we'll be taking just one question from the pre-conference questions. And this is from David Anyankimu from Nigeria. So he said, is there a tendency that these traits that make them good for therapeutics be passed down to offsprings?
So could you repeat the question one more time, please?
Okay. So he's asking if there is a tendency that the traits that make these pets, such as goats, good for therapy, if there's a chance that those traits can be passed down to the offsprings, to their children.
Well, so are the traits biological? I'm not a biologist or an animal behaviorist, but from my experience, I would say that goats that are of a particular breed would tend to have certain kinds of traits. So it's likely that offspring will have similar traits to their parents. But again, you can't depend only on their genetic traits, especially if you want animals like goats to be part of therapy programs. It's very important that you socialize with them, you spend time with them, you interact with them so that they will be very used to interacting with people.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Dr. Lee. Zasloff. It's been amazing having you here with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
And
much.
people are welcome to email me.
Oh yes, please, you are free to email us, send an email with your question. If there's anything you'd like to perform. I see Dr. Nancy asking about the citation to an article. So Dr. Lee will be in the chat box for all the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're almost at the end of the conference. I'd like to take this time to tell everyone to please make sure that their name on the Zoom matches the name that you used to register for the conference for easy dissemination of certificates after the conference. So please, if your name is different, please cross-check and correct the name you would like to be on the certificate for attending this conference. So quickly, within the next 10 minutes, we have a very special person coming to talk to us on the topic, harnessing the therapeutic potential of farm animals, a ruminant veterinarian perspective. So, our speaker today is a veterinary public health and business development professional with over 13 years of experience spanning animal health, commercial strategy, capacity building, and stakeholder engagement across West Africa. He currently leads Zoti's operation in Ghana and supports strategic activities in Nigeria, where he has driven market expansion, technical outreach, and innovative public-private veterinary partnerships. He holds a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine from Ahmadu Bello University, Master of Veterinary Public Health from the University of Glasgow, an MBA from the University of South Wales, and a postgraduate diploma in Market Systems Development. Please join me to welcome Dr. Adah Ogwuche.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, I'll just try to share my screen again. Shortly. Just give me a moment. Can you see my screen?
No, doctor.
Can you see my screen?
No, we
Not
can't see.
yet.
We can't see your screen.
Oh, okay. Okay. Screen. Can you see my screen?
Okay, yes. Yes, we can see it now. We can see your slides now.
I will put on my camera now, so that makes it easy for me. Okay, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure and an honor. Can you see my camera? Yes, okay. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. I first of all want to thank Dr. Sunday, the convener of this conference, for the opportunity to speak, but also to commend what he has done. From a small discussion a couple of years ago, this conference has grown from a small activity to a nationwide, a Pan-African, and even a global conference. So I'm just going to speak for the next few minutes on the ruminant veterinarian's perspective. I happen to be the president of ARUVIN. ARUVIN is the Association of Ruminant Veterinarians in Nigeria. So I will just be discussing from that perspective. So I do not claim to be an authority in human-animal interactions, and we've listened to a lot of experts and professionals. So I'm just going to be speaking from a very general perspective and from the lens of a ruminant vet that I am. So it's important to note that farm animals, the title of this conference actually focuses on farm animals, and a lot of our farm animals are ruminant animals. Hence, my particular interest in this discussion. So farm animals have been a part of our lives as humans, producing meat, milk, but also as companions. And I'm very happy that talking about companionship, the last speaker did a lot of justice to the role animals, especially goats, play in companionship. So I'm just going to share at this point an experience I had a few years ago, which was a bit new to me. And I'm speaking from the background of a veterinarian from Nigeria, not just Nigeria, but in this part of the world, sub-Saharan Africa generally. So as part of my master's program, I had the privilege of visiting some farms, some petting farms, and I'm happy the last speaker also talked about these petting farms. Now, people value animals, and the value they attach to animals goes as far as them taking time to go to some of these farms where they are able to pet animals. Now, some may ask, what is petting of animals really about? Unlike in sub-Saharan Africa and some other parts of the developing world, where animals are allowed to roam freely, people are able to see them, connect with them in different ways, it's not the same in some other parts of the world. And that means that you have to put in extra effort to be able to really interact directly with these animals if you are not someone who is working on, or probably someone who grew up on a farm or working in that sector. So it was quite interesting for me, and it was the first time I saw that petting animals was a big deal. And parents took out their children to go and interact with animals. It was a kind of relaxation for them. On the other hand, adults as well took out time or will take time to visit some of these petting farms, pay money to actually interact with animals. And that was quite contrasting to my part of the world from where I was coming in Africa, where we really live in and around the animals, interacting with different types of animals, and especially in rural or peri-urban areas where almost everyone is a kind of smallholder farmer. So it was quite an interesting exposition for me, and I began to value the role animals play even more. What this means for me, again, is that a lot of people in our part of the world are constantly interacting with animals and benefiting from this interaction without actually being consciously aware of the therapeutic value they are gaining from this interaction. So that is something that I've had reason to think about lately, that people are happier, feel better, but they don't even understand that it is because of these interactions that they're having that they are enjoying these benefits. Now, from a lot of literature, there are a lot of benefits that can be attributed to interaction with animals generally, but now focusing on farm animals. First of all, from the mental health perspective, interacting with animals has been reported to help lower cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, and also help to decrease symptoms of depression because of the exciting nature of animals. But also boosts serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone, improving mood and making people generally happier. But also emotional regulation, empathy, improved mood, and reduction in emotional outbursts have been some of the things that have been attributed to interaction with animals by humans. But now on the other side, on the physical side, interaction with animals, especially farm animals here, means that you are out in the field, you are able to move around, get off your regular routine, get some exercise on, get some coordination and motor skills, enjoy some sunlight as well while interacting. So these are some of the important benefits that has been attributed to human-animal interaction. Now, I'm going to lead this into the Association of Ruminant Veterinarians in Nigeria and the role of the veterinarian in this whole discussion around human-animal interaction, and especially the role of farm animals. First of all, to introduce ARUVIN. ARUVIN is an association that has come together to bring together vets of interest in ruminant practice generally. So we try to be forward-thinking, promoting best practices in the ruminant, production and ruminant health sector, but also looking to see how we can embrace and, partner to promote emerging areas of, ruminant practice, I would say, including a topic or an area like farm animals in therapeutics. So from the perspective of a veterinarian, I think that there is a huge role that a vet plays in the discussion around human-animal interaction generally, but also even particularly when we are discussing farm animals. Just going back again to my experience visiting some of these farms in Europe where people go to pet animals, the essence of that visit while I was doing a public health master's degree was actually to understand potential, areas of interaction that could lead to, zoonosis, for example. People could go to such farms, interact with animals, and then, if not properly managed, it also exposes them to disease, and vice versa. The animals, on the other hand, are also exposed to disease from humans in any form of interaction that exists. So the vet plays a huge role here in participating in this discussion, because it's the vet's responsibility to ensure that the animals are safe and healthy, to ensure that the humans that are interacting with them are, safe and kept, from contracting any zoonotic disease. But also, on the other hand, ensuring that they don't leave their animals, their pets, or the animals they are interacting with to go back to the society and spread any form of disease. So that balance is important to be kept, and the vet plays a very, very significant role there. But also, you have to look at the public health perspective. What are the sanitary measures that will be kept in place wherever there is that platform for human-animal interaction, especially in farm settings? Are there going to be places where people are washing hands, or dips, etc.? There are so many areas that I'm seeing the impact and the role that vet can play. But also, we want to talk about ethics. All the speakers have spoken about, ethics and welfare of the animals, and we have to constantly look out for the welfare of the animals so that the animals are not exploited, and as much as possible, they get to enjoy their natural environment and good atmosphere. So a vet is also at the center of that discussion. So moving on, at the end of today, I can see a lot of opportunities. And the opportunities I see is that there could be opportunities to develop animal-assisted therapy programs locally. I'm not aware that those are at top gear yet, especially in this part of the world. But these are areas that can be explored and, can be explored also with the support of the veterinarian. Of course, the use of animals, goats, sheep, rabbits in schools, rehabilitation centers, elderly homes have been reported to have a lot of benefits, emotional, psychological benefits, even in managing PTSDs and the like. So these are opportunities that can be exploited and can be beneficial to the society here. And we can already leverage on the existing human and animal interaction, especially in rural areas in this part of the world, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, where people are in constant day-to-day interaction. And we should study more to really understand, some of the advantages that we can attribute to this interaction with animals, and then see how that can, be beneficial to other populations. So it leaves us, or leaves me, and I'm pushing the question to us all that, after all the things, all the presentations we have listened to today, what if we really valued farm animals, not just economically, but emotionally and socially? Because this part, the emotional and social value of animals, is often lacking. But with the exposition of this conference and the discussions we have had, I think a lot of people will begin to think twice about the emotional and social benefit of animal interaction, human-animal interaction. So I'll stop by saying that this is a noble and very timely conversation, and especially it is quite noble in this part of the world. I'm stressing it. And thanks to Dogalov, the potential I see in the future is vast, and veterinary professionals, and particularly farm animal and even ruminant veterinarians have the tools and the responsibility to contribute, if not lead, these discussions safely and responsibly. And I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adah Ogwuche. I hope I'm pronouncing it well.
Yes, it's Adah Ogwuche. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, so I'm seeing a lot of thank yous in the comments, in the chats. Wonderful, wonderful. All right. Thank you all so much for joining. Hold on. All right. Thank you very much for joining this amazing conference, the 5th edition of Dogalov's Human Animal Support Initiatives Conference. Thank you so much to everyone for joining. We had an amazing time. And right about now, I would like to hand over to Dr. Sunday Agbonika.
Thank you, Praise. Thank you to all the speakers so far for today's conference. And this is just day 1, and day 2 is right around the corner for tomorrow. And I'm so glad for all the interactions, all the learnings, and everything that we've witnessed today at the conference. I particularly was happy to also see connections, networking, and everything happening in the chat, and also seeing that people were, there were professional interactions that were happening as well. It's, for us, one of the most important reasons why we set this up, this whole conference series up, was, like I would always say, first of all, to spread the awareness of human-animal interactions in our part of the world. But then beyond that is to also foster relationships and literally everything that would also help to grow the human-animal interactions space, whether it's in our part of the world or in any part of the world, that this is also get put into practice. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, a big thank you to all our speakers who took the time. Like, I know that for Dr. Lee, for example, she literally had to be up super early because of the time difference to be here. So thank you for that level of sacrifice to all the speakers and everyone who's been here from the beginning, even to this point of the conference. We are so happy to have you. And at this point, we would say we are bringing the conference to a close for today and look forward to having you again here tomorrow so that we will wrap up the conference. And tomorrow's package is equally as impactful as what we've already witnessed today, and a lot more. So thank you, everyone. And I will be stopping the recording now.